So our culture and our communities have been doing this since time immemorial. And how could we incorporate this truly in a brand and tell these stories and share honest, like ancient Indigenous teachings? These are poems of wisdom that have lived through history, and we still talk about them today because they clearly are meaningful and valuable.
Welcome to the Prosperity Playground, the podcast where business meets energetics, strategy meets soul, and prosperity becomes inevitable. I'm your host, Anna Lozano, mom, founder, investor, mentor, and energetics in business expert. This is your weekly activation to rewire how you think and feel about wealth, success, and personal power, because it's not about working harder, it's about regulating deeper, aligning stronger, and receiving wider. You don't hustle for your future, you calibrate to your higher self. Join me weekly for high-level conversations with the world's most inspiring entrepreneurs, creators, and thought leaders. True prosperity isn't just about money. It's about alignment, freedom, expansion, and embodying your worth. Welcome to the playground. Let's build your most prosperous life. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the Prosperity Playground podcast. Today's guest is Jenn Harper, who's the founder and CEO of Cheekbone Beauty, a cosmetics brand focused on sustainability and supporting Indigenous communities. Since its 2015 launch, the brand has grown significantly, securing major retail partnerships and donating over $250,000 to charity. Jenn has earned widespread recognition, including being named one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women. In this episode, we dive into the dream, the mission, and the birth of Cheekbone Beauty as Jenn shares the powerful origin story behind the brand, from a middle-of-the-night dream to building a brand rooted in representation, visibility, and giving back to her Indigenous community. We discuss Jenn's mission of creating Indigenous beauty as a category, and of course, the real founder journey, retail responsibility, and staying well-resourced as the woman behind the brand. As always, my loves, let us know on Instagram what resonates from this powerfully inspiring conversation. All right, let's dive in. All right, Jenn Harper of Cheekbone Beauty, welcome to the Prosperity Playground podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yes. So we're going to dive right in. You launched in 2015, and I would absolutely love for you to take us back to the beginning when this company was just an idea. What did that look like for you?
Oh, wow. That feels like so long ago, because 2015 is when it was all, I don't even think it had a name yet. So it was just like the inception, right, of this idea of having a brand. And so I knew maybe what I wanted it to feel like, but obviously you don't get like that whole like look and feel thing till like much later. But I was in my former career, which was in the food industry. So I was selling seafood, and had an actual pop out of bed middle of the night dream with 3 Indigenous little girls covered in lip gloss. Woke up and wrote in my laptop that I wanted to figure out how to make a lip gloss and then use like a portion of the profits to do something to help my Indigenous community. So that was just like the initial idea. And then for years, it was this idea and belief that like just representation mattered so much, so that like if we felt seen, like I guess the power in feeling seen and being seen, and that was really the foundations of the brand. Then I get into the beauty industry and just learn, wow, there's so much room for improvement in this space. And then started working on figuring things out when it came to things like ingredients and packaging and these ideas and concepts of sustainability and how they were really related to my Indigenous culture, so to our Indigenous roots, and how could we like create a brand that felt maybe different than something that already existed in the world? So we weren't just
Mm.
here making another lipstick or lip gloss, if you will, but we wanted to do something different because it's really hard to be looking back. I think we've picked a really, really competitive industry and space that's generally run by these giants. And so how are we going to stand out in that space?
I love that. And, your mission of sustainability, but also creating a brand that represents your culture and Indigenous people is so beautiful. And it's a through line in the entire company. So, my question is, could you have created any product with that? Because your foundations are so powerful and they're so felt, but it could literally be connected to any product that you envisioned. Or did you really want it to be beauty?
Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting question and something I would have definitely maybe played with or took more time with way back then. I think I liked the idea of beauty because it's an industry where I'm a purchaser of those products. It looks like it's fun and glamorous and so maybe I chose that for those reasons, but most certainly you could take the concept and the idea of what we've done into any brand. And in fact, when I think about it, I remember talking to my brother about, I'm like, I was trying to explain it to him and give him an example of the kind of brand that I was thinking of. And IKEA is one that comes to mind. I'm like, we're walking around as non-Swedish people saying all these Swedish words because all these pieces of furniture are named these Swedish words. And I was like, this is what I wanted. I want our lipsticks to be named this. And can we add natural elements from nature into some of the products that are so there was like all of this going on and like I knew exactly what I wanted it to look and feel like and you could do that in any industry.
You've done such an incredible job, and you've really brought us on this journey of being a part of your culture, which I think is incredible. And I just read on your Instagram before I hopped on, and it says on a mission to create Indigenous beauty as a category. And I got chills all over my body. And my first question was like, how can we support her in doing this? Because you're really taking us on this journey, and there's so much to learn and so much to be a part of. And I guess that is the question, like, how can we support you? Anyone listening, how do we create this into a beautiful category? Because it also represents Canada. When I feel like when I look at, iconic Canadian brands, you are one of them, and you're doing such powerful work with the products you have launched.
Thank you. Yes, that is such a great question because every brand needs a community. It needs a village. We all know all businesses do. They need people around it to support it and uplift it. And so this idea, um, was like it's been here all along, but I guess putting it into words was this way of seeing how the beauty industry operates. It's always operated from this sort of this trend perspective. You'll notice once we talk about it, you won't unsee it now. So for right now, we're in a Korean beauty moment, right? Like all you can hear
Yes.
if you're in this space is people talking about Korean beauty brands. And now you can you can head to drugstore level, you can head to high-end beauty, you can head to Korean beauty. It's even in our discount stores now, everywhere you go. So over the generations, we've seen many beauty categories have their moments. French beauty, Japanese beauty, Ayurvedic beauty. And so these are the conversations that have always existed, but I've never been able to recognize anyone else that was really talking about Indigenous beauty and what that meant. And truthfully, of course, when we say that, I think the automatic visualization or image that comes to people's mind is maybe like a gorgeous, beautiful Indigenous woman in her regalia, in beaded earrings. And that in itself is, in fact, true and not wrong. However, when we think of these sort of cultural beauty categories that have existed over time, they're truly rooted and based on like the principles of that culture and that community and how maybe they take their beauty routine to this ritualistic level or, Korean skincare is like, I think like 12 steps or something insane, right? And we've all fallen in love with it, and we've all fallen in love with the idea of having like glass skin and all of these things. And so with Indigenous beauty, our purpose is really to show the world that Indigenous people truly have been the OGs of sustainability. They are the group that is constantly thinking about protecting the planet. And,
Mm.
if we're concerned, like it's almost like the idea of we're protecting your home, because this is our home, right? And so our culture and our communities have been doing this since time immemorial. And how could we incorporate this truly in a brand and tell these stories and share honest, like ancient indigenous teachings? These are poems of wisdom that have lived through history, and we still talk about them today because they clearly are meaningful and valuable. So we have the seven generations teaching is thinking about what we do in this moment today as each of us as individuals, and how will that not only impact the next generation, but it's the next seven generations. And it's so one of our, ancient leaders, warriors came up with this narrative, and then it was passed on to many different tribes and nations, and we still sort of all have our version of this teaching. It's because we're not only just thinking about our children, our grandchildren, we are thinking about our great great grandchildren, and what kind of place or home would we want to leave for them. And it's ultimately this idea of, how much, like, I think about it as our own bodies, right? Like, how well are we deciding to take care of them? And the earth is just like, this is a truly extension of that, in the way that many of our indigenous teachings and stories are that we are all in relation with another, and that includes our planet and our home. And so there's just so much knowledge and meaning that comes from our groups, our peoples. And this isn't just I am Anishinaabe or I come from the Ojibwe Nation. This is like all the tribes and nations around the world. There is similar teachings and stories. And so this category of Indigenous beauty, it's a global movement. We are, I think it's 370 million Indigenous people on every continent of Earth. And so our communities have always been the ones that have just really, really taken the idea of respecting this gift seriously, and are the ones truly protecting it. If you were to turn on the news at any given moment, somewhere around the world, an Indigenous tribe or nation is really protesting and fighting for, usually against giant corporations, about what kind of impact they're making on the earth. And maybe these stories get seen and maybe these stories don't. And we all know, there's reasons for all of those things, but it's truly important to understand this concept or idea of stewardship, and our people take that very seriously. And so as a brand, of course, that's something that we want to take seriously. And the idea of Indigenous beauty will be synonymous with the concepts of sustainability and how important that is. And I think at this time in history, it's like now more than ever, should consumers be taking sustainability this seriously? Should we not think of that there could be a better way and option? And so how does anyone support this? Well, truthfully, making products differently, it's a challenge. And the expectation I've discovered is when you make things in a more natural way, and I use air quotes because a lot of things are more naturally derived. It doesn't mean, it's not like you can take the aloe plant and rub it on your face, but then you can't put that in a product and sell it on a shelf, because of course there's all kinds of regulatory compliance and even stability issues. So when a product is made, the raw materials do transform into some shape or form. That's chemistry, it's science, right? And so we're not talking about making things from a raw plant and putting it in a jar. We're being realistic and take the use of modern Western science, marrying this with ancient Indigenous wisdom. And then we make products that are more naturally derived for the consumer. And so the consumer then has to think about the product slightly, because we've been able to do this in really super efficacious ways, that this is not going to perform perhaps as much as you love your long wear lipstick or long wear anything, because unfortunately long wear ingredients have chemicals in them that just don't maintain our Indigenous standards in terms of the kind of ingredients we want in our products. And so I think it's just about thinking about the product slightly differently. And it's something I don't talk a lot about, because I think at the end of the day, proven that we can make really great products despite them being slightly different and more naturally derived.
I love that. But simply sharing this background and this story, it's you get buy-in, and it's like the ethos of the company is so powerful that like sign me up. This is who I want to be purchasing from. I'd love to take it back a little bit in terms of like, could you share some of your favorite Indigenous beauty rituals that maybe have been passed on to you through generations that are just a part of your lifestyle, but you're also able to bring into our realm of possibility and how we take care of our skin and our body?
For sure. So every community has different, maybe different, it would be a different resource based upon where you are in the world, right? And so we know that I think, is it beef tallow? It's having its big moment, right? And so
Wow.
with Anishinaabe people, believe it or not, bear grease is literally, so the fat of the bear is something that people have put on their skin for generations. And now, from the science understanding of beef tallow, bear grease, and even the concept of, it's called slugging, right? So, but people have been doing this with more petroleum derived ingredients like Vaseline, for instance. I was just, not to name a
Mm.
brand, but that's just what it is. But people use it. But the product is similar in the sense that it's called an occlusive. And so what that does is it is a high fat concentration of an ingredient that's really going to prevent evaporation happening from the skin, and it's going to lock in and seal in all of the good things that we want to stay in our skin. And so bear grease would have been an ingredient that has done that. And what it also does at the same time as locking things in, it's actually softening our skin. And so soft, supple skin tends to wrinkle less. It tends to look dehydrated. And so it's giving all of the beautiful effects that we hear and see in the beauty world today of, you want beautiful, hydrated, plump, gorgeous skin. Well, because of using those kinds of occlusive ingredients, like my ancestors would have done with bear grease, it's going to give that skin the look and feel that we want, which is that soft and supple feel, which is just fascinating to think about. But it just,
Yeah.
that looks different from all of these cultures from around the world, but it's scientifically speaking the same idea, because the ingredient is called an occlusive.
Wow, it's so beautiful. And so, if we go back to the idea, so you had this powerful foundation in your mind, and you're like, okay, I'm going to bring this to life through the beauty industry. You didn't come from the beauty industry. What were the first steps? Like, I'm taking you back because I'd love to take us on this journey of, idea to launch to now being, like I said at the beginning, an iconic Canadian brand. What did that look like for you? What did you have to learn and unlearn? And yes, which stories do you want to share with us on this evolution?
Yeah, truthfully, I've started to be really open about saying how embarrassed I am at how I started, because when you don't know, you don't know. We don't know what we don't know at the time,
Yeah.
right? And so the beauty industry for generations has also been a very simple, easy industry to actually enter. And the reason is, through globalization, mass manufacturing, you truly could get a product made anywhere
Yeah.
and you could put your brand or logo on it, right? So that is how, unfortunately, Cheekbone had to start. I didn't know any better, but it was really quickly, actually, it was like 3 months in. And then people would start asking me about ingredients and the kinds of packaging we were using. Like, we had everything was coming from it's called private label. So you're buying from a manufacturer, they're making all the products. And at the time we just had lip gloss, a contour palette, and a brow gel. Those were like the 3 Cheekbone products. And I couldn't answer anybody's question about the raw in materials or the ingredients or the supply chain, the source. And I was like a little taken back by, what am I doing? Like, what am I selling? I have no idea. And so, of course, I'm trying to do my own research. And then I have to understand, I don't like, this is where it becomes like, we live in a world now where a lot of us can do our own research, but even being a researcher is a skill. And people go to school to learn how to become a researcher properly, because where you're gathering your information, source truly matters. Is there clinical data, trials, papers, all of those things to back the information that you're learning about? We don't don't want to just take the words of Sally from Kansas on skincare because perhaps she doesn't have the education level or true understanding of what all those things mean. So it's super important that we're gathering the correct information. And so I would ask the supplier or partner, the private labeler that we were working with at the time, they wouldn't answer any of these questions. And so it became clear to me really early on that there was something they weren't telling me and maybe some truths that they weren't sharing and what was the reason why. And so ultimately just began figuring this out, just like every one of us does, learning that, there's a reason they're not telling me where the mica comes from, because it is in fact true that much of the mica sourced around the world is being sourced and supplied by children. So like slave labor, right? And so learning that there's different levels and degrees of even pigments and where we source and supply them from, and heavy metals tends to be a serious problem. And so there was a reason why you can resource responsibly sourced palm oils, or you can resource ones that maybe humans, the forest is being deforested in an improper fashion and really doing a lot of negative things to the planet versus doing things properly. I think understand the concept of like fair trade. So organizations that are paying their people correctly versus not paying. So there was just so many areas where red flags were popping up, and I immediately knew, okay, I cannot have the brand go on this way. What am I going to do differently? And that's when I decided I would do this. The thing that every reasonable person does is learn to make and understand the supply chain on my own with the support of contract chemists, contract sustainability scientists, and learn everything I possibly could about every ingredient. So that meant going back to, okay, I had to figure out how the things were made and figure out how to make them. And then went through this with a chemist we were working with at the time. Her name was Jennifer as well. And she would introduce me to chemical suppliers. And it's important that I always am clear about this. We have to know that the word chemical is not bad. Water, H2O, is a chemical. That's going to be an ingredient that's in. So we have a lot of people on the internet saying, chemical free. Well, no, that's completely impossible. And if you ever see that anywhere, that's a red flag, because that person doesn't know what they're talking about. But when you start to learn and understanding that, those ingredients, where they came from, how they were made, and then we would make the product, which was the first one that I started to make on my own, which was a lipstick. So now the formula today is our Sustain Bullet lipstick, a traditional lipstick, and went literally around the world and hand sourced every ingredient that goes into the lipsticks that we make to this day, and just had to go through that process with every product that we're working on. Then I get to meet a lot of our partners, and then there's formulations perhaps that they had been working on, and you just learn, okay, now I work with this person. They understand where I'm coming from. They understand that I understand what I'm talking about, and they also get what kind of formulas we're looking for. So more naturally derived. We want to know exactly where the ingredients are coming from, and is this a partner that we can work with? And it took many, 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 many years, and I can truthfully say that it's probably only in the last 5 years that we've solidly, fully understood what people call product market fit. Like, we now know our brand, this is who we are, and it fits this customer. It's like meeting that intersection where you find exactly where your products fit in the world. And so we've landed there, and that took a really long time. And then there's so many parts of a business that it even took me longer to learn and understand. And over the last 2 years, things like operations, we had to get really serious about learning and understanding, so that we weren't making too many of those lipsticks, right? You don't ever want to be sitting on too much inventory, because that is going to dramatically impact your cash flow. And then understanding like all of the finance side of things, and how the finance side has to marry so well with the operations, and, spend my sweet spot. And everyone knows this, is I love making the products. I love coming up with the ideas. I obviously love the marketing side of things. I feel like there's a lot of fun in that, but also another whole can of challenges when we live in a world that, algorithms change every single day. So a brand is trying to keep up with them. How our websites operate can change dramatically if the big players make changes on their platforms. And so it's a constant juggling act. But I think every entrepreneur would fully understand that side of the story.
This is exactly what we signed up for when we put on the hat of
Yeah,
entrepreneur founder as my shirt founder. I received this from another
I
founder out
love
of
it.
Toronto. She gifted me this t-shirt and I was like, oh my
Gorgeous.
goodness. I don't know if any of us knew what we were signing up for when we said, let's turn this idea into a physical product. And then the Pandora box opened up.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I feel it's a big lesson in self-responsibility. And when you take that, basically when you said, okay, this is not in alignment with my core values, with this vision of sustainability and bringing in my Indigenous roots into this company that I'm bringing to life, I feel like that's a big lesson for all of us founders, because if there are any red flags, it is up to us to figure out what the pivot, what the shift, what the transformation is, because ultimately it is that integrity, that vision, that foundation, how we're going to bring the market behind us. And because of your story, and again, because of your foundation, it is very easy for someone to say, like I said earlier, to be like, I can get behind this brand because I know who Jenn is, I can feel her heart, and I know that this company also has those roots. And so I'd love to ask you, you are everywhere. Their brand is everywhere. You have incredible major retail partnerships. What can you share in terms of distribution? So retail, e-commerce, with brands that are listening, founders that are listening, who maybe this is their goal. They want to be in the Sephoras. They want to be in the major retailers. What have you learned with that process?
Well, many, many things. I didn't come from the retail world. Remember I was in sales and marketing in the food space, and so never touched in the retail space, even in food. And so for me personally, it was a huge learning curve. Every partner honestly speaks an entirely different language. And so it's like you have to learn their language, their culture in order to work really well with them. And if you want the relationship to work, you really have to make that effort as the brand, no matter what distribution channel you choose. It is truly up to the brand to make those products sell in the place that they are shelved or housed. I think sometimes as brands, you think you've nailed it when you land a great retailer. It's not their job to sell your products off the shelf. It's your job as the brand. And that is a huge deal. And I think it could be essentially what could make or break your partnership or relationship, because if the products aren't moving, remember, this is business. It doesn't matter if you befriend the buyer or not. If your products aren't moving, they will kick you out of their stores. That's just how this works. And so and it may happen, sooner, it may happen later. Like, the reality is these operations, they want to sell more products. And so if they need to make space for a brand that's actually going to move, they will do that and make those decisions. So as the brand, having a strategy for each partner that you work with is a really important part of the journey. And so just defining what that means for each one. And it's not easy. It's really challenging for sure, because again, you're learning the language, and then now you have to have the strategy of how your stuff is going to move and sell through that. And just monitoring it and understanding that, like, you may think you fully understand the situation. You really need to understand reporting and ask for reporting from these partners. Not all of them provide that, but like, what is your sell through looks like? So that means, like, they bought your products. Yeah, great. You've received that PO, but now what does the sale of those items look like on the daily, weekly basis through each location that they're in, and how are they moving, and why are certain locations not moving? And it might not be, it could look really bad when you're looking at one of those financial, those weekly or monthly reports, and it said nothing moved from this store. Well, that might mean, a lot of these stores are run on systems that are computer based, not necessarily human. And in many cases, we've discovered the product wasn't even out on shelf. So it looks like you're not selling, but you can't be in northern Quebec in a store because you're based in Toronto or Vancouver. And so if you don't have a team, and most small business will not have a team of people that can visit all of the locations of a big retailer. And so those products very well may not even hit the floor. And so it's understanding and knowing who to ask and find out, and sort of doing all
Mm.
the background work and all the sort of fact checking to make sure that those things are happening correctly. Because I've been in all of those situations where it wasn't a case of nothing selling, the product wasn't even on the shelf.
Wow. And as founders, it's like one of our biggest goal is to be in these national chains. So that's like job number one. And then job number two, where it actually all begins, is the sell through of the product, which you just mentioned. Are you able to share one way that maybe you've had a success story with the retail partner that was your company's effort in supporting the sell through that maybe we could use as an example?
Yeah, and this is a tough one because there's a lot of different sides to this, but I believe people in the doors that help support the brand are a very, very big deal, but that's very, very expensive. And so it's really understanding
Right.
what you can do at the level you're at, what kind of support you can do. Is there like, what is, and this is how we approach all of our relationships now. It's like, what is best in class? What did that look like when you launched a brand? What does that look like from their perspective? And then we take the intel that we've had the pleasure and honor of gathering from all of our other relationships now for the last, I think we started in retail with our first major retailer 5 years ago. And so we have 5 years of data based on that relationship, and then all of the new ones that have come along the way. And so you want to say what worked the best from our end, and then asking them and their team, right? Because many of these
Mhm.
situations, especially as a small brand, they're not even used to working with small brands. Think major retailers, they work with the conglomerates, the big guys. Their people know exactly what to do. We don't know what to do at all in comparison. And
Yeah.
so asking the right questions is critical, and just so important to this relationship actually working. Yeah. And it might not be,
Mm.
and if your audience, if you are not a celebrity or an influencer, even if your product is going to hit that shelf, who is actually going to buy it? And and you may think you have the best product in the entire world, and you might, but if you don't have an audience of people there willing and ready to try it, or the people on the floor helping the store or the brand, the partners in there selling and moving that product, it's not going to move. It's not, I really am opposed to that, like saying now build it and they will come, because there's a lot of what ifs in that kind of thinking, right? So you need an
A
audience, and you
hundred
need to
percent.
like figure out who's going to buy your stuff. And this world in 2026 looks really different than it did way back when. Maybe 20 years ago you could put a product on the shelf, maybe even 10 years ago, and you could get really lucky and people could immediately fall in love with it. And a lot of retailers really were in the day and age, because there wasn't the influencer space and not too many celebrities were starting brands. We now want to live in a world where every celebrity is starting a brand, and every influencer is starting a brand, and they all have their own built-in audiences. And so those aren't going to be your customers, those are their customers. And so who are your customers going to be, and where are they going to come from? And I think that's part of the strategy that you need to think about before you want that major retailer relationship to even exist.
Mm, such great tips. I love that. So you personally, Jen, as founder, you've been named Canada's top 100 most powerful women. I would love to know, how do you as founder nourish yourself? How do you resource yourself when we shift to mindset or soul level? Like, how do you hold it all? What are some of the behind the scenes that you do to take care of you?
Yeah, a huge believer in the power of prayer. Like, that is part of my daily routine, is waking up, spending time in nature. 100% is how I feel rejuvenated and refreshed and connected, to be quite honest, to the creator. And that's where, all of my, those daily practices for me come into play, is just like making all of those connections in my life. And then I feel like when I'm whole, which just for me means emotionally, mentally, physically and spiritually. Like I look at it like this four quadrants, and in my head I visualize how full are those, like a gas tank, right? Are they all at top level? Where are we feeling weak today? What do we have to do? And that's how I start my day every single day, with making sure all of those things are touched on. And being physical is huge. Like that's however I can find and get movement, that's a big, big part of it, for me, for sure, to stay at as sort of as much as I could be at my peak, to do all the things we have to do, because it's a lot. And if I wasn't whole, then I don't think we would get very much done, right? Or I wouldn't be able to have the energy to do all the things I need to do.
Absolutely. I feel like founders running on empty is really a thing of the past. And I get it. We're so busy and there's so much to do and there's visions to be fulfilled, but it starts here first, because when we can run on full, then everything else seems to work out. And there's this feeling of ease
Really
with
does.
it. And, you know, and I talk a lot about ease and flow, and that does not mean that we're not doing, but we're doing from a frequency that actually feels alive. It feels really supported. And I always say, me and God are in partnership, and everyone else comes after that. And so this is how I'm building this next brand. I did things very differently when I first started out. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom, your depth. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we move on to some rapid fire?
I feel like we've talked about everything in like this very short period of time.
I love that. This is an incredible brand to really be a raving fan of. And so thank you for all that you do. And really the storytelling and sharing your vision is what just creates this instant buy-in. So I really appreciate that. All right, rapid fire. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. As ready as I'll ever be.
So if you had to start over today, knowing what you already know, what's the first thing that you do to launch Cheekbone Beauty?
Oh my goodness. I would have become a content creator. Or if I
first and foremost, right?
Somehow, yeah, I just see it. I see the magic of that system right now in this world we're living in, and I would have done that differently. I would have been like, become the content creator first.
Oh my goodness, good answer. Who is someone that you'd love to have brunch with who you might have not met yet?
Oh, wow. I've been like an Oprah fan since I had two children. So my son is 23, will be 24 this year, and my daughter is going to be 21. And so two mat leaves, like we're, with Oprah 4 p.m. every day. And I feel like I've just learned so much from her, and I've always been a huge fan. And even I've fallen in love with brands because they were like on her Oprah's favorite things when that was a thing. If I know younger audiences might not even know what that is, but it was like, if you were in the Oprah universe, you would just be like blown up immediately. Like it was wild to watch and see, but super cool.
So cool. And I feel like thankfully Jillian Harris has done that for our Canadian market, but
yes. And I've met her already.
So
Oprah's on the list though.
I love that. Oprah, if you're listening to the podcast, we have yes, there's a message for you.
So much so.
Do you play pickle?
This is.
Oh yes, show us.
I had this made. It's like from an actual beater, and I was like, put our Aki red lipstick on Oprah and our logo on this. And so like one day, if I ever get to meet her, this will be the gift I'm gifting her.
Okay, I love that. That right there is a manifestation that needs to come to reality. I love that. Do you play pickleball? I know it's so random, but there's a reason for this question.
Okay, no, but I want to. So me and my daughter are like, why don't we play pickleball? We should play pickleball. We've said it like a million times, but we haven't started yet.
Oh my gosh, it is so fun. Literally, pickleball changed my life, and it's the craziest thing to say, but it did.
Okay, I love that.
And finally, what is your definition of prosperity?
Oh, wow. It's happiness. And so the one thing that I've learned, I will be 50 in July, over my, I still feel like relatively short life, is that I used to think happiness was like I don't know, it had to be this all the time thing. And I don't look at it that way anymore. And for me, like true success and prosperity would be just having those moments and pockets of joy, happiness, and feeling that in that moment and enjoying it and understanding it and enjoying that I could have something terribly tragic and sorrow happen, but that can still exist at the exact same time. And just knowing that, I feel so much happier.
Yes. Oh, it brings us instant peace. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Beautiful. And finally, where can we find you? Where can we support you?
So on all the socials, we're Cheekbone Beauty, at Cheekbone Beauty, and I'm Cheekbone Jenn. So we just made it simple. I don't know why for years I was trying to go with all these other handles, and I was just like, I'm just going to be Cheekbone Jenn to make it easy for people to find me. And truthfully, no one ever knows my name. I'll be on the TTC. I will be somewhere, and somebody will be like, "Hey, you're the," and then they'll be like Cheekbone, and like they don't know my name, and I don't care. They don't need to know my name as long as they know Cheekbone Beauty exists. I'm happy.
The power of the brand name. I love that. Jenn Harper, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for being on the Prosperity Playground podcast.
Thank you for having me. I loved this.
Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Prosperity Playground podcast. If this conversation sparked something in you, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts so you never miss your weekly activation. If you enjoyed the conversation, please rate and review. Your feedback helps us reach more souls just like you who are ready to calibrate to their most prosperous life. Know someone who needs this frequency boost? Share the episode to Instagram and tag me at _Anna Lozano so we can grow our energetically aligned community together. And please remember, true prosperity is about alignment, freedom, expansion, and embodying your worth. Start today. I'm Anna Lozano, and this is the Prosperity Playground. See you on the next activation.